ClipperBlog. Bleh. Let's start again. ClipperBlog Live, Google Hangouts edition, post-game. The Clippers 100 over Oklahoma City. Let's bring in our panel of esteemed Clipper experts. First, we have Charlie Widows. Say hello, Charlie.
Hey, guys.
DJ Foster.
Hi, friends. Hi, Chris Paul lovers.
And Michael Shagrin.
Michael Shagrin, nice to see you. And
Shagrin?
Yeah, you're referring to my sister, DJ. She is trying to grasp Chris Paul away from his wife and claims CP2 as her own.
Okay, so let's go with initial reactions from this victory. Charlie?
Yeah, they just kept coming back. I mean, I think they were within 6 times or something, and Oklahoma kept putting it out of reach for the time being. You kept wondering when Paul was going to do it, and by the end, the defense turned it up, and Oklahoma couldn't get an open look. And credit to these guys, they kept fighting. I mean, you hate to be cliche about it, but they really did stick around, and the closer won it for them.
DJ, how about you?
Yeah, I felt like just Chris Paul down the stretch. He was incredible, just the way that he manipulates screens and gets his defender to do whatever he wants him to do. Coming into this game, Thabo Sefolosha was the #1 pick-and-roll defender on ball handlers, according to Synergy. He ranked #1. He allowed ball handlers to shoot, I think it was about 20% in those situations. And Chris Paul just comes in and completely sets him up a few times, gets to the rim at will. That last play, you just kind of see the patience that he has working with his screener, and I don't think there's anybody better in the game. And I thought it came down to James Harden in the pick and roll on offense for the Thunder versus Chris Paul in the pick and roll on offense for the Clippers, and I think we know who wins that battle. So if it comes down to that, Chris Paul is going to win. So I'm very impressed with the performance tonight, particularly down the stretch. Chris Paul is just incredible.
Chris Paul is incredible. Michael, how about you?
Yeah, I have to repeat the overtures about Chris Paul. That was just some next level performance right there. And he doesn't always have the opportunity to take the fourth quarter upon himself and make it his game and do what he did in those last couple possessions. But tonight, the intensity of the team, and I think Paul was able to rely on the team in certain situations a lot more than he normally does. And he ultimately was able to come away with it. And he hasn't, in the last couple of games when we've been struggling, he hasn't really been doing what he does down the stretch. And it's almost like the spotlight brought it out of him. And the higher the stakes, the more drive he had for success. And I think Mike Smith said it. The Clippers were down by 4 after a 3-point play to start out the third quarter. And then it got stretched to 11 or something, 63-52 before DJ sunk 2 free throws. And Mike Smith said you could see it in Chris Paul's eyes that he's not going to allow the game to get away from them, and that this is not the game where people are going to talk about how the Clippers fall apart. And he almost single-handedly, at the end at least, made sure of that.
Yeah, I have to agree. Something I really liked about this game was that you heard Jordan Heimer and Kevin Arnovitz talk about it on the Clippers podcast. A lot of these games seem like they won in an unsustainable fashion, like Randy Foye would go off or Caron Butler would somehow get 30 points. And
Right.
I'm looking at this box score right now. Let me put this up to share. And no one really did anything too spectacular except for Chris Paul, which to me sounds like a completely sustainable model because Chris Paul is amazing.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, like you said, when it's, Randy Foye going off, it's kind of fluky. But no one's going to stop Chris Paul in that scenario. I'm really interested to see if teams start just completely trapping him, and you don't ever see an opponent do it in late game situations like that, especially with, a couple, like 24 seconds on the shot clock, or whatever it is, very late game situation. You don't see an opponent come and fully trap, but I don't know why they don't do it at this point, because Chris Paul gets layups with games on the line. It's incredible. You see guys hit jumpers and tough fadeaways. How many guys do you see get layups on against a good defense with two great shot blockers? I mean, it's insane. I don't think there's a better guy in the league at manufacturing easy shots for himself in clutch situations like that.
Yeah, on that last. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I actually, as great as Chris Paul was, I actually gave the MVP to Blake Griffin during the Daily Dime. I just thought he limited the jump shots. He matched the physicality of Ibaka, Perkins, Collison when he was on him. He fought to get looks down low, and when he's making a couple free throws, that opens things up for Chris Paul. I don't think he gets layups in a vacuum. I think the fact that Blake isn't floating around the perimeter draws the defenders in for him.
Yeah. I was gonna slightly say that, but I was gonna agree with DJ in that I think they may have tried to trap at the end, at least on that last play. There were two defenders on Chris Paul. It wasn't just one of those ordinary switches where Chris Paul just gets the big man on him. I think he had Harden or it was Westbrook and a big man on him.
Perkins.
There was it was Perkins. Yeah, there was like 2.5 seconds left on the shot clock, and he was still on the perimeter. And I thought to myself, all right, well they trapped him. This is exactly what we've never seen before. Chris Paul just not even be able to make a play getting down the lane, and somehow he managed to make his way all the way to the basket and float the ball over. I think it was the outstretched arms of Ibaka, and it just rattled in. I think the reason why the trap didn't work, and the reason why a trap really just won't work on a consistent basis against Chris Paul, is because he's so smart that he's never going to put himself in a situation where there's not an easy out of the trap. Either it's forward or it's backward, but he's never going to have a situation where he's going to just be completely strapped down by two strong defenders in a trap. And a worst case scenario for him is he calls a timeout. He's heady enough that even if there's no physical play he can do, there's a mental play that he can do to get himself out of the situation.
Well, I don't even think that's the goal of the trap in that situation. I just think it's to get the ball out of his hands. It's to kind of appeal to the distributor in him that there's a wide open guy at the 3-point line. Randy Foye is all by himself, like no one even in his same zip code. And Chris Paul has to make that pass, right? I think that's the goal with the trap. I don't know who has mobile enough bigs to pull it off, right? Because Ibaka can come out and trap, but Perkins isn't quite mobile enough. If they played like a Boston, Garnett could do it, but there's not a whole lot of bigs you probably trust, 30 feet away from the basket to trying to come out on Paul. But I don't know. It's interesting. We'll see if it happens in the playoffs, but I don't know if anyone's going to figure out a way to stop Chris Paul. I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, Perkins had been better. All the bigs had been a little bit better, at least, of making Paul go around as opposed to going directly to the hole like he did on that last play. And then what was amazing to me was that Westbrook fell for the pass fake out to the corner, where that's the goal of the defense, is to get Paul to give it up to the corner, and yet you just can't, in the heat of the moment, you can't make that decision. You fall for that fake every single time.
It's like when people fall for Nick Young pass fakes.
Right.
And it's like, oh, God, he's Nick Young. Like, he has never passed once in his life. Like, what am I doing falling for this?
Right.
Yeah, there was that great moment in the fourth where it was kind of a fast break, one of those pseudo fast breaks the Clippers run, where Blake Griffin just gets into the post really early before the defense is set, and Nick Young got his man up in the air on a pump fake, and he had to fight every single bone in his body not to jack up that three with 20 seconds left on the shot clock. and he managed to make the entry past the Blake, but boy, was that precarious.
Like you could see a small part of him die after that play. You know, it's just
You just hear him say, "Man, what if I made that shot?"
that was going in for sure. There's another shot Blake stole from me. No, I thought Nick Young did a good job defensively tonight.
Yeah.
He had to do a good job
Got to give
defensively.
him defensively some credit when there's credit to be given.
And
It's weird. I felt like it's kind of come in a weird circle for me on Nick Young. I was so not against the trade, but I thought it was one of those trades that a GM makes because it makes him look good and it's not necessarily helpful to the team. I thought the actual practice of playing Nick Young was going to be a disaster. And he hasn't been that great, but I feel like he's been better than people are saying he's been. So now I'm on like the complete other side of it, where I'm like a Nick Young apologist, and I don't understand how I got here. It's very confusing for me.
Yeah, it must be the phenomenon of high expectations not being met. You had the low expectations. I had the exact same experience when I went and saw Step Brothers in theaters. I thought it was the funniest movie I ever saw because I thought it was just going to be the worst, but.
It's all about life is all about having low expectations. That's a positive slogan for you. Maybe we just got swaggerized, guys.
Baggy P.
I
Speaking
just love it.
of keeping low expectations, Kevin Durant makes that open 3-pointer. How many times out of 10 usually? I mean, when we give him that 3-pointer with as time's kind of expiring, what is the chance that he's going to make that versus not make it? Luckily tonight he didn't, but.
Well, I mean, it was a pretty long 3-pointer. Kind of contested, kind of off balance. I think throughout the game, if they're going to rely on Kevin Durant ISO and Russell Westbrook ISO, obviously those guys are really good, but they're still ISO plays where they're forcing jump shots. So I thought the D was awesome. I mean, Chris Paul's going to do what Chris Paul does, but the D was the story, I thought.
Can I just say that I'm so happy that Chris Paul yelled at Randy Foye at the last timeout, no 3-pointers, and they went ahead and at least like partially contested it, because if Chris Paul didn't say anything, I'm sure Durant would have been wide open, just sitting there for 3 seconds and then shooting it.
Right.
Yeah, DeAndre would have showed and then sprinted back to his man at the rim.
Yeah. So let's talk about the defense for a second here. Kevin Durant shot, 7 for 21, Russell Westbrook 3 for 14. Is that a product of the Clippers actually playing defense or just OKC having an off night? Michael, let's start with you.
I think a lot of it has to do with your boy Eric Bledsoe.
Yeah, boy.
I think if anyone should have a sweet nickname, it should not be Nick Young with Swaggy P. I think Eric Bledsoe should have the most interesting nickname.
Blender. His nickname's Blender. I've already.
I'm a Sonic the Hedgehog guy.
Blender the Hedgehog.
But when he was on Russell Westbrook, Russell Westbrook did not do what he was doing all game. Russell Westbrook wasn't shooting well from the field all day. He was getting his production from the foul line, and conventional wisdom, Eric Bledsoe fouls a lot. Not tonight, and Russell Westbrook was drawing fouls like crazy, and Bledsoe stopped it completely. I think Westbrook, when Bledsoe came into the game and Westbrook were in the game in the fourth quarter, Bledsoe didn't allow him to score or get to the line within on 5 minutes of D, and then he went out and Randy Foye came in, and on that very play, Russell Westbrook drove to the lane, got fouled, hit both his free throws, and I think I want to be a little bit upset with DeAndre's defense just because when he gets into the zone. Not the zone, because he doesn't really get into the zone. Into the zone defense, he has difficulties keeping his position, and when he gets out to the top of the key and shows for a split second and leaves Kendrick Perkins wide open under the basket, even Perk with little to no offensive skills is going to score. And I think when you have Bledsoe out there, it makes DeAndre and whoever else is playing down low, it gives them more comfort staying in their position and being down low as opposed to having to go out and help. I think if you improve the perimeter defense like you do when Bledsoe's in the game, it's going to reap rewards on your low post defense because there's just less to worry about down there.
Yeah, I didn't think DJ's zone D was that well. No, it wasn't good, but it wasn't that bad. But Blake is also such a bad defender that you just have like two bad zone defenders in there, and neither of them can fix each other's mistakes. When Kmart isn't there, it doesn't matter with which one. If it's Kmart and DJ or Kmart and Blake, the defense just vastly improves because you have one low post defender that actually kind of knows what he's doing. Charlie, what are your thoughts? What do you think about the Clippers D tonight?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, the bigs are not going to be what anchor the D like you kind of want it to be. I think, as we said, Young on Durant was awesome. And then making Westbrook get his points from the line. I think that the Thunder was a little more efficient with the ball. I mean, obviously they didn't shoot very well, but they were more efficient with the ball than they can be. But the Clippers kind of stayed in front and contested shots, which against a team where they're not going to work for easy shots, that's kind of how you have to win. And the rebounding battle was, I think, even if Oklahoma might have out-rebounded them by a couple, but they pulled down the boards. It was one of those where it was kind of an ugly win in a good way because everyone was being physical and the Clippers didn't give up. They didn't get teed up for anything. They didn't give up super easy baskets, even though there were a couple plays sprinkled in there with just some breakdowns, but it wasn't enough to turn the tide. And I think just the hands in the passing lane, contesting of some shots was really, that's how you beat these guys.
Is it just me, or does Durant always seem to struggle against the Clippers? I feel like he's, at least the last 2 years, just about every game he's had an off night. I don't know why that is, because it's been different defenders on him. I feel like he always has bad shooting nights against the Clippers. It's very weird.
I mean, he's a shooter. He's not. If he only got to the line 5 times tonight. Shooters are susceptible to that, I think.
As the Clippers lineup proves on a nightly basis.
Right. That's very true. I think another point from this game is, at least defensively, it's a good matchup. Scott Brooks versus Vinny Del Negro.
Yeah.
Because Scott Brooks loves going just straight ISO or very basic things down the stretch, just like Vinny. So you're not going to get out schemed by Scott Brooks and the Thunder. They're going to win because they're hitting shots, and it's the same way with the Clippers. So it's really more of a fair fight than it would be against a San Antonio or a team like that. So
it's a great point.
Gotta like that. Yeah.
I think really what it comes down to is the game plan is ISO, and then when you have Chris Paul, that's the game plan, and he's the one who's going to make the better decisions if it's close.
Right. Let's really count our chickens before they've hatched. If Clippers met OKC in the second round, would you feel comfortable with this matchup that it's actually something that we could win?
Oh no.
DJ?
Oh, that is counting those chickens. I'm not really excited for an OKC matchup.
Would you prefer the Spurs if they made it to the second round?
I would prefer playing the Spurs, yes, over the Thunder.
Really?
Yes.
Oh.
I would.
We have Kevin Arnovitz joining us live from Oklahoma City. Kevin, how are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you guys?
Good.
We're struggling with this format, but we're getting through it.
Maiden voyage. It's all right.
That's right.
What are your thoughts from this game?
Signature wins tend to have a short shelf life. If you drop a home game against an inferior opponent, you tend to forget about them. But, it was a good win for a lot of reasons. The Clippers have always operated on the spawn insane and pray for rain model. Basically, they'll get a performance from Paul, they'll get one from Griffin, and then they're left sort of grappling for a third. performance. And then tonight, everybody gave him a little bit of something. I loved Kenyon Martin's game. Nick Young kept his worst instincts in check. Foy had some timely shots. It wasn't any of his exploits from recent weeks, but they got just enough. They kind of figured some things out defensively, I think, down the stretch. And frankly, the Thunder missed shots they normally make, and that happens. But you kind of have to be around to take advantage of that and not be down 15, but hang in a game. And that's all you can do on the road against a better team. You hang in there, and in that respect, I give them a lot of credit.
Kevin, we were just talking about before you came on, who would you rather see in the playoffs at this point? We were counting chickens before they hatched. The Spurs or the Thunder?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Send those chickens back.
The Thunder scare me because of their size, and I'd rather take my chances with DeJuan Blair underneath. With Neal. It's one thing that when you're watching the game, and they have a great press row here, it's 2 floors, you're right behind the scorer's table, is the Thunder are just so much bigger than the Clippers are. Almost across the board, DJ accepted. They're just massive. I mean, Westbrook, I don't know what his height is, but he plays ridiculously long. And to the extent that they're not big, in Cephalosha's case, they'll just shut you down. I don't like them as an opponent.
So you'll take that over the Popovich-Vinny Del Negro matchup? Because Charlie had a good point that Scott Brooks is he's no Popovich.
No, but you know what? Gary Neal is no Kevin Durant. So, I mean, it's pick your poison. I don't think either opponent is really somebody you want to face. But, as a parlor game, I guess I'll take the Spurs grudgingly.
Kevin, did you notice a commitment of Blake's to get in the paint and at least draw attention if he wasn't going to score himself?
Yeah, and that's what they do. They load up at the nail. They load up right at the post. And it's funny talking to one of the Clippers beforehand. They're like, this is what they're just really going to come at Blake on the catch. And it wasn't really a double team so much as they kind of walled him on every time he dove off a pick. And he said after the game that he had talked to Ivoroni before the game, and that Mark Ivoroni had said, assistant coach for the Clippers, that look, you're going to do things other than score tonight. You're going to have opportunities. They do leave the corners and wings a little bit vulnerable by loading up, and that's essentially what happened.
Yeah.
Someone driving?
That's the Brooklyn streets.
Ah, the Brooklyn streets, yes.
Seems like
it's a Lubavitcher in a Mini Cooper is what it is. It's the Brooklyn streets.
Mean streets.
What else we got?
I think we lost Mike on audio temporarily, so I'll jump in with a question that I think he may have asked you. Kevin, what do you think about Eric Bledsoe? What do we make of this guy? What kind of role does he take going forward? What'd you see tonight from him?
I mean, it wasn't the supernova performance from Memphis the other night, but this was a tough game for him. I think he's most capable when he's got a really good matchup at the 2 or at the point. I would have loved to have seen him get a few more possessions on Westbrook, just because I think that would have been a fun matchup. That one play, he is just so ridiculously strong.
Yeah.
I mean, the length and strength. I asked him earlier today, I'm like, could you see yourself guarding some threes in this league? He's like, not LeBron. But yeah, you.
What a stud.
He plays so big. He just, and Look, I like him in the two. You saw that was problematic a little bit was, he kind of parked in the right corner because, frankly, that's what happens in this offense to wings. They just kind of, set up shop over there. What he needs to learn is sort of the art of the Ronnie Brewer cut. Because you could see Harden playing off him a little bit, cheating. And so he really was a liability on offense. And I think it's not necessarily him. I just think that if you're going to use him as a two, there are some great teams that use cutting twos in this league. That's how Wade started. He's never been a great perimeter shooter. I mean, I don't want to make that comp, but a guy like Brewer is a little bit bigger, obviously. But you can do things other than just park your twos and threes in the corners and say, okay, now we can run a 1-4 pick and roll. And I think, what ultimately can happen is he's going to have to learn how to. I want him to make that back cut, not just stay there in the right corner. But that hasn't happened yet.
Do I got audio here?
Yep. Go ahead,
I
Mike.
got time for one more, then I got to go back on the right.
All right, Kevin. In terms of the low post defense, I don't know whether it be zone or man-to-man. What is it without going so far as to implement an actual defensive system? How can we get DeAndre and Blake to find their locations around the basket with a little more strategy, as opposed to just being drawn out on maybe a hedge on a pick and staying out there, or not getting back soon enough, or not finding maybe the median location that would be not so destructive?
I think one of the things that happens is, a lot of it is communication. You actually saw there was a possession in the first half where after such a play, you saw Chris Paul do this with both hands. I can't use both hands as I'm holding up my other hand with my computer. And, that was Chris's way of saying, you guys need to communicate on the rotation back. I think their pick-and-roll defense has actually improved a great deal over the last month. Certainly the last 3 or 4 weeks. And I think now it's that second rotation. It's okay, you've showed, and now you got to return and recover. And look, there's not a great system here yet, but I think that's just part of the problem. Is these are two really young guys, and I'm not excusing it. I think obviously they would benefit from a coherent system drilled into them by a defensive expert, but I think that's part of it. I thought that Chris Paul sort of, talk to each other was exactly it. It was a case where I think, I want to say it was a possession where Serge had sort of ducked in and no one had really recovered back to him after the initial.
I think it was Perk.
Or vice versa. But, that's ultimately what's going on.
Okay. Great stuff. Kevin, thanks for coming in.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Kevin.
Kevin is the only. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I thought maybe Harden not beating the Clippers was a key to the game, and then I looked and he had 17 points on 8 shots.
Yeah.
The man is outstanding.
That guy is the most efficient scorer in the NBA of anyone. I feel. I don't even care if that's not a true stat. I'm going to say it is.
Speaking of Harden, because he does just tend to kill us. Putting Bledsoe and by the way, thank you for asking Kevin my Bledsoe question. That was you
got your back.
read my mind. Well, one of the reasons why Harden had a good game tonight, at least I'm willing to write it off as him having a good game, is Chris Paul was guarding him when Bledsoe was in the game, when Bledsoe was guarding Westbrook. And, Bledsoe is going to be able to handle Harden better than Paul, just like Bledsoe is going to be able to handle Westbrook better than Paul. May not be by all that much, but he just more physical, he's longer, he's faster on his feet. And if that's all we're going to give James Harden, with a point guard guarding him, a true point guard, then I think we have to, grit our teeth and be okay with that. And I also think that that's one of those switches that was a necessity when you went to put Bledsoe in, where if you're not gonna have Bledsoe guard Westbrook, you're out of your mind. And thus changes had to be made in the defensive assignments. I think as we move on in the season, and particularly in the playoffs, there's going to be some other domino effects on defense due to Bledsoe's presence. And I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know who it's going to be up against. But an example that pops into my head, if we were playing the Spurs, maybe you have Chris Paul guard Manu, and Eric Bledsoe guard Tony Parker, and maybe if the game is switched and Tony Parker is just not playing as well as Ginobili, you put Bledsoe on Ginobili. I mean, I think it just gives the defense a level of flexibility that we never had before.
I say we put Reggie Evans on Tony Parker so he can injure him, and therefore Clippers will win the series. That's my strategy.
There was definitely a point when Kenyon Martin threw down Harden, and then they brought Reggie Evans off the bench, and I thought that was the strategy they were going to go with. Just do that.
I think that should be the legitimate defensive playoff strategy. Just try and hurt people. I mean, what else do we have to lose? Everyone hates us as it is. I mean, we're already the villains of the league. I feel like every non-Clipper fan just hates the Clippers now, and I mean, might as well go full out with it.
You know, guys, I thought that this game was completely sustainable for the future, but I just found what they can't do. The Clippers shot 19 for 21 from free throws. They were 90.5%.
It's huge.
What?
That was the difference. DeAndre went 5 for 5, I think.
2 for 2.
Let's see here. DeAndre was 2 for 2. Blake
That's right,
was
2
4
for 2.
5.
100%, like I said.
Nailed
I mean,
No, what it was during the third quarter, Blake and DeAndre went 5 for 5. That's what it was.
right,
And
right.
As a team, they went 14 for 14 in the third quarter.
It's true.
I did think that was a savvy move by Chris Paul, though.
You know
He
what?
just got them in foul
That's not
trouble.
unsustainable.
90% is not unsustainable for this team.
That's so unsustainable.
I mean, I don't think it's no. It's not unsustainable. I think DeAndre and Blake should be spending lots of time at the line, and everyone should be shooting 90% from the free throw line.
Oh, there you go.
I did like the fact, though, that they were in the bonus so early in the third quarter. I think it was like 8 or 9 minutes to go. Chris Paul just racked up the fouls, and when Oklahoma City was starting to pull away, they just went to the foul line over and over again.
Absolutely. Key to the game.
Yeah, that's a fantastic stat. We also should mention Mike Smith's stat that anytime Blake Griffin has over 5 assists, the Clippers win. I have no idea the sample size of that. It's just hardcore truth from Mike Smith. So take that for what it's worth.
Mike Smith generally stays in the realm of truth, if that's any consideration.
I was thinking about this tonight. Along the lines of people hating the Clippers now. I've heard some people not like Ralph, and that to me just drives me crazy. And I was thinking about it tonight with Vin Scully being sick. Like, if Ralph misses games, I don't know what I'm going to do. It's going to be the weirdest experience ever.
Who do you know that doesn't like Ralph?
I know people, and I've seen it on Twitter, and it's weird.
I don't get it either. I don't know how you could not like his sense of humor, and he's the best.
Have you guys heard the story about how Ralph ended up with the Clippers?
Silence. I guess not. Why don't you go ahead and recount that?
Very quick recap. He was with the team in San Diego, was with the team for a year after they moved to LA. Then he was let go for some reason or another. He was a year later, he was walking with his wife on the beach, ran into Donald Sterling. Donald Sterling invited him back to his house for a jacuzzi and some daiquiris, and Ralph Lawler has been the announcer ever since.
Is that real?
That is real.
The man knows how to handle himself in a hot tub.
Yeah, that's right. Move on. Andrew, move us on. We're
All right.
deviating back to our old ClipperBlog live ways here, and it's my fault. It always is.
Let's try out this new game that I have called the O-Face.
Let's do it.
Yeah, that's
This
good. Now we're
Clippers
back on
team-
track.
Yeah, they always leave
Jacuzzi
us
love.
wanting something in a game. So tonight, obviously, Blake posterized Ibaka. If you look at your screen, I just sent you the YouTube link for it.
Yes.
why don't you guys just take a look at that and give us
Are
your.
we all
give
going
us
to
your
click
best
it at the
reaction.
same time?
It doesn't really matter.
Okay. Well, I should have clicked it 5 minutes ago because my computer is running on DOS.
And this time it
Okay. All right. This is
Oh,
making
man.
for captivating internet right now.
Good
Oh, yeah.
television.
We're not gonna get DJ's O face.
Oh. 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 That's so dirty. Oh,
This
God.
could also double for a 2 girls 1 cup reaction.
When I first saw it, my girlfriend told me that I barked like a dog, and I didn't realize I was doing it. But I literally went. I was like, "Oh!" I was like, "Oh!" So that was my initial reaction.
All right. Looking ahead to tomorrow's game, Minnesota just got smoked by Denver tonight. So both teams are coming off of back-to-backs. What are your
and
thoughts
most importantly, Kevin Love left that game with like a head wound.
Oh,
What head wound? That sounds bad. What
Apparently
happened? Did
concerned.
someone like stab him in the head with a trident? Like, how do you get a
There was a trident involved.
DJ, let's start with you. Things that you're looking out for with potentially Kevin Loveless Timberwolves team.
Loveless Wolves. I'm not very scared if they don't have Kevin Love. I would watch out for their bench. Earlier this year, the Wolves bench completely obliterated the Clippers bench, and then their starters en route to victory. So that would be what I would watch. I think it's a good thing to watch generally, especially with the rotations that Vinny uses. Blake sat for about 10 straight minutes tonight from the first quarter to the second quarter. And when Chris Paul and Blake aren't out there, the Clippers can sometimes struggle to score. So it would be nice to see the bench really come through offensively and for us to continue our man crush on Eric Bledsoe.
Yeah, this seems like it could be a huge letdown game possibly after this rousing win, especially with no Kevin Love. I mean, we've seen the Clippers kind of phone it in for games that they don't think that they need to show up for. Charlie, what do you think about that?
That's a great point.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. I mean, obviously, Michael Beasley could score 30, and that could happen. But I agree totally. I thought that they really did respond to the length, the physicality of Oklahoma. Obviously, the atmosphere, I'm sure, played into that in general. But, yeah, I mean, I think this team is still susceptible to not just playing with that intensity all the time. So I do think that is a legitimate worry in that kind of game.
Michael, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think not only is Kevin Love going to be out, but Rubio's out. So that's double the medicine for the Clippers that they're going to have to take down, because we all know the Clippers can't perform well when a team is missing their best players. I mean, if they go up against that team, it's either it's something that's the way they're wired, or maybe it's the approach from the coaching perspective. I think that's where I would channel most of my disgust for the way we play when a team's best player isn't in. I think even if you look back at the most recent Kings game when Marcus Thornton, who's one of the leading scorers on that team, wasn't in, when we went away and played there, barely came out with a win. I think it's a game like tonight. It would be a game like that game in Sacramento or tomorrow night in Minnesota, where it's one of those nights that Vinny Del Negro needs to say, we clearly have advantageous matchups all over the place. How are we going to exploit them systematically? You don't need to have an offensive system. Just what are we going to do? What sets are we going to run that just take apart the lack of offense and defense that this team has? And I don't expect that to happen, but that's what should be happening.
Systematically without a system. That's gangster, Michael.
Methodical without a system.
I should say,
I
guys,
think I'm stealing that quote from Arnovitz, but
I don't want to be on record as saying Kevin Love won't play tomorrow. I just know that he left.
he has a
the game.
concussion. I just looked it up.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, I would guess that. Well, they're still kind of in the race, right? They're not too far out of it, are they?
I think they're out
I
of
think
it
they're
now.
out of the race.
Are they way out of it? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if they're out of it, he'll probably sit then. I like how Andrew, you really brought everything down with the letdown. You're like the friend who it's 1 a.m. and you're partying and you're drinking, you're having a great time, and you're like, hey, don't you have to work at 5 in the morning? Like, you're that guy.
It's always measured expectations. The last thing we need to see is everyone like, woo, we're going to the title. We beat OKC once in OKC. That's it. Shut it down.
Shut
like
it down.
He says.
Plan
Yeah,
that
no, I mean,
party.
it's been shown they can beat these teams. They can beat anyone. I mean, it's not like we really. I mean, it was a big win, but we didn't learn that much tonight. I don't think. They've beaten these guys. They beat Miami. They beat Chicago last year. They beat these teams. It's kind of, can they string it together? You don't want to fall into that trap like the Lakers used to do, where we turn it on in the playoffs, because that doesn't always work.
Right.
The Lakers did have the triangle to fall back on, though, which
Right.
was very helpful.
Systematical methodicalness.
Yes.
Final question. The Lakers destroyed San Antonio tonight, and Memphis came out with a victory over Phoenix. Do the Clippers get the 3, 4, or 5 seed?
Ooh.
We'll start with you, Charlie.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it could be any of those. And frankly, to go back to what we were talking about earlier with the playoffs, those are the teams I'd be more scared of than either of these, because they have the low post scoring. You're not going to rely on, even if Kobe becomes Durant and has a bad shooting night, they still have Powell and Bynum, whereas Serge Ibaka and Kendrick Perkins just aren't going to beat you like that. And I think the same thing with Memphis, where they have a formula that doesn't work against, or that works against the Clippers. So to me, it's fun. I mean, it's almost sacrilege to say that a team like Oklahoma is a team you want to face, but just in terms of matchups, that's the one where I think you actually have a chance.
Michael, how about you?
Yeah, I think Charlie hit it on the head. The playoffs is all about matchups, and I think we'll probably end up with in the fourth spot, maybe the fifth spot. I don't think we could leapfrog the Lakers just because each game is worth so much at this point, and we don't have anywhere close to a cakewalk of a schedule ahead of us. But man, would that 3 seed be nice in the first round to get one of those, either Dallas or Houston or maybe Denver. Houston's the 6th seed right now. Don't give me that look. But
I'm just those aren't bad teams.
I mean, they're not bad
I'm
teams.
scared
but
of Houston.
But the Grizzlies in particular are, I think, the scariest team in the West. And not only did we not look I think we looked awful against them 2 nights ago, but they were missing Tony Allen, who single-handedly against Chris Paul. Abbas Sefolosha is a good defender. Can't take it away from him.
A great
Tony
defender.
Allen, a great defender. Tony Allen just gets in your head, and I do not want to know what 7 games of Tony Allen hounding Chris Paul looks like.
All right, DJ?
Yeah, there will be blood if the Grizzlies and Clippers play against each other. That'll be a great series. I'll say they get the 4. I think they get a 4 or 5 matchup, and they make it really interesting. Whoever they play in the first round, all those teams that are right there. I think personally, I would hope for Houston to somehow climb up to the 5. I think that's the most favorable first round matchup, other than, of course, like Denver, but that would take some work. I would say a 4 home court against Houston is what I'm rubbing Rabbit's feet for, I think.
Man, I can't believe you guys are looking forward to Houston. That team frightens me. They can make three-pointers like nobody's business. The Grizzlies have almost no outside shooting, which is great because the Clippers can't defend the outside shot. They're going to give up the inside anyway, so... I mean,
Yeah. that's a good point. I think Memphis scares the pee out of me defensively, though, whereas Houston, I feel, is a little softer, and the wings could have better nights. Courtney Lee's a pretty good ISO defender, but I'd much rather have my chances against Luis Scola and Courtney Lee than Zach Randolph, who's actually turned into a pretty good physical defender, and Tony Allen.
Yeah, because if the Clippers win, it's not going to be because they played excellent defense. It's going to be because they're an offensive juggernaut that just could not be stopped, that got momentum, started rolling,
Get
and
buckets.
it wouldn't matter who goes up against him. And that's why a strong defensive team, I think, is going to pose more problems than a really potent offensive team, which is why the Spurs and the Thunder are just less, I just think, generally less scary than the Grizzlies and the Lakers.
All right, it sounds like you guys all think that the Clips are going to end up in the 4 spot. I think I'm going to zag a little bit and say that they're going to climb all the way to the 3, that the Lakers are just going to sit Kobe the rest of the way, and they're just going to phone games in, not really worry about what their seeding is, just try and get to the playoffs. And I'm praying now that we get Dallas, even though I think the worst matchups for the Clippers are well-coached, well-disciplined, well-executing teams.
Yeah.
Like Oklahoma City, the Grizzlies, all these other teams that put out athletes on there, and they just want to try and muscle you up. I'll take their chances with them, but when you want to try and outsmart the Clippers, I just feel like they're doomed.
Yeah, that's a decent point. I would be weary of the Grizzlies. I feel like they're a pretty well coached team, but I'm with you everywhere else. I'm definitely with that. The thing I like about Dallas is they don't have a lot of athleticism on the wings. I don't really see Vince Carter blowing by Randy Foye like James Harden was tonight. So there's that.
What about Sean Marion?
Not offensively.
Sean Marion can blow by Randy Foye.
He's straight. Well, I could blow by Randy Foye. All you have to do is this, and then go.
Actually, Sean Marion does not have the ability to do this. He'll do this.
Yeah, that's right. Just hands everywhere. Jazz hands. Is that it?
Okay.
Are we done here, Andrew? Take us home.
Yep. Last thoughts in one sentence. Something to leave the viewers with. Charlie, we'll start with you.
I don't know, guys. I really did think the defense won the game tonight, and the free throw shooting, which are things that don't always win the game for them.
Horrible grammar. Just run-on sentence.
One sentence.
Michael, one sentence.
Oh, I thought it was going to be next. Shoot, that was a comma. Sentence still going. Defense was important. It helped a lot, but ultimately this was Chris Paul's night, and without Chris Paul, this would have been an absolute disaster.
DJ with the last word.
Chris Paul is magic. There you go.
Right. ClipperBlog Live. The Clippers win 198 over Oklahoma City. Thanks for tuning in, guys.